The Baltimore Ravens. When that name comes in mind, who do you think of, or what do you think of? You've been thinking of guys such as Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Terrell Suggs, and many other great players. When I think of the Baltimore Ravens, I think of many great defensive teams, defensive units, such as the 2000 Ravens, 2001 Ravens, and the 2003 Ravens. What if I told you that the Baltimore Ravens are still building upon that defensive mindset into this very day? The Baltimore Ravens have taken a unique approach when building a defenses, I should say. Rather it's drafting guys in the later rounds that become stars or really key pieces in the rotation. Rather it's giving guys who don't deserve one last chance, and many, many more. The Baltimore Ravens are building really great defenses. In this past decade, we're going to go over it. So, what's good, YouTube? It is your boy, man, Rick Logical, back again with another video, man. And in today's video, man, as you see from the title, we're going to be talking about the Baltimore Ravens and their defensive dominance, and what they're building is really, really special on the defensive side of the ball. And we're going to be talking about this past decade, more so of the later of the 2010s until now. I think the Baltimore Ravens are just doing something very unique, and they're doing it at a really high level. So we're going to begin in 2015. So as y'all know, in 2015, the Baltimore Ravens, they just came off that Super Bowl win a couple years prior. They just, they were sort of rebuilding, retooling. They still have some pieces on that Super Bowl team, such as Jimmy Smith, Terrell Suggs, and I think that's pretty much it, and a couple other pieces. But in 2015, they went 5-11. They only had one Pro Bowler in Elvis Dumberville. C.J. Mosley and Daryl Smith both had 100 tackles, over 100 tackles, and C.J. Mosley was on the come up. Now, that's what we're going to talk about in the 2015 season. In the 2016 off season, they acquired many, many key pieces. So as you can see here, they acquired on March 14, 2016. They did acquire Eric Weddle. They signed him to a deal, and in the draft, you're going to see this. This is a common theme. The Baltimore Ravens are pretty mid at drafting early, but in those mid to late rounds, they're really, really good. Okay, Tavon Young, they got him in the 4th round. I'm not saying he's no Jalen Ramsey, but he was a really, really crucial piece in the rotation in the later seasons, as we're going to talk about. Then they got Matthew Judon, who has become one of the best pass rushers in the whole NFL. And again, the Baltimore Ravens, they did really, really, really good at getting pieces, really great pieces in the 4th and 5th rounds, and they're signing them to really, really, really cheap deals. Instead of going out of free agency, they're risking these guys and developing them, and lots of times they become really, really good, and then sometimes but Matthew Judon, he has become one of the best pass rushers in the league, and the Baltimore Ravens, although he's not a Raven now, he was a really big piece. Now, one player that we got to talk about is Eric Weddle. Now, Eric Weddle, he's one of the greatest safeties of all time, and he's one of the best safeties in the 2010s. He sort of gets overlooked because of guys like Earl Thomas, Troy Polamalu, Ed Reed, which ironically, 2 of those guys were Ravens. One of them was his replacement, and then one he sort of replaced a couple years later in Ed Reed, and Earl Thomas was obviously his replacement. So if you don't know who Eric Weddle is, he's a 5'11" safety from the University of Utah. He was drafted in the 2nd round in 2007 NFL draft by the San Diego Chargers. He has made numerous Pro Bowls, about 3 of them. He's made numerous All-Pro teams, 3 in the 2nd team and then 2 in the 1st team. And in the 2015 season, the Chargers, although he was sort of declining, the Ravens still seen value in him, and they signed him. He obviously had value with the Chargers. He played about 13 games, and 3 games that he missed, his impact was missed. He didn't have he had no interceptions, but his impact was so significant on passing because they had really bad corners. Their rushing was pretty cool, but they had really bad corners, and the games that he missed, they lost all 3, and the quarterbacks went off. So as you can see, the 3 games that they lost were the Raiders, Ravens, and Broncos. Obviously, 2 of those games were division rivalries, and then the 1 game was the Ravens, his new team. But Derek Carr in the Raiders game, when Weddle wasn't playing, 3 touchdowns, 289 yards, A young Amari Cooper had 5 receptions, 133, and a touchdown. Latavius Murray had 15 carries, 85 yards, 1 touchdown. And this is no disrespect to Latavius Murray, but he went crazy basically. But in the Ravens game, which they lost by 3, Joe Flacco, 319, 1 touchdown. Although Forsett, he didn't go too crazy, but it's Forsett, like, who is he, right? But a old Steve Smith had 5 receptions, 82 yards. And then the Broncos game, Brock Osweiler, this is the last game of the season actually, 14 for 22, 232. Now, ironically, he had 2 interceptions and Weddle wasn't there, but I mean, Ronnie Hillman and CJ Anderson, I mean, they went crazy. I mean, both had 15 carries. Hillman had 117 and Anderson had 95 yards, 1 touchdown. I mean, his impact was missed. I mean, although he just wasn't as good as he once was, I mean, you can still see that his impact was missed. So heading into the 2016 season, right, the Ravens, they have their new free safety. He's pretty much a star, right? Their middle linebacker, TJ Mosley, he's going to emerge this year, right? He's going into his 3rd year. And then, they got to fix some other issues, right? They're going to let some of these young guys develop, and then eventually they're going to be a star defense, right? And essentially, that's what happened, right? The Ravens were 8-8. It's not the best. Missed the playoffs, okay, but 2 Pro Bowlers and CJ Mosley and Eric Weddle. But their defense really stepped up from last year. They had the 7th best defense in total yards, 9th best in passing yards. This is top 10, but the 9th worst in passing touchdowns. They forced the most interceptions, but they couldn't create any pressure. Their rushing defense, 5th best. Rushing touchdowns, 4th best. And then the 9th most in points given up. And then CJ Mosley, he had 92 total tackles, 4 interceptions, and Eric Weddle, 89 total tackles and 4 receptions. So the problem is passing touchdowns and sacks, right? Those are the 2 things that they have to address. And again, Matthew Judon, he's developing. Although Terrell Suggs is older, he still is giving an impact that we're going to see. But the Ravens, they're heading into the right direction, right? And in the 2017 offseason, they have to make some major moves, some major development, and they'll be set. So heading into the 2017 NFL Draft, the Baltimore Ravens have the 16th pick, which is a middle-of-the-pack pick. It's not a good pick, right? You always want a really good pick because you're a bad team, or you were a great team and you have a low first-round pick, which means that, you're basically about to be like a Super Bowl contending team. But the Baltimore Ravens, they had a 16th pick and they need a corner, right? But although they did bring in Brandon Carr from the Dallas Cowboys, they still need that number 1 corner that they can develop and soon be a star for them in the later years. And you had guys like Marshawn Lattimore, Marlon Humphrey, Adoree Jackson, Gregory Conley, and guys like that. And they went with the 16th pick, Marlon Humphrey. So as stated, they went with Marlon Humphrey with the 16th pick. And in the 2nd round, they drafted Tyus Bowser, a outside linebacker, which again, he's really good in the rotation. Not a star, but he's good for the rotation again. And again, like I said, they signed Brandon Carr from the Dallas Cowboys, a older guy, veteran. He can provide mentor, leadership into the secondary. Again, they were great at interceptions, forcing turnovers with the addition of Eric Weddle, but they were really bad at giving up too many touchdowns, right? The 9th worst, that's not really good. So they got Marlon Humphrey. They're going to let him develop. And they got Brandon Carr. Jimmy Smith is still there doing his thing, holding it down. And they also re-signed, which is a under the radar, Anthony Levine. He's a DB, but he's going to make that transition into middle linebacker style play. They traded for Tony Jefferson, another asset. He's not like a superstar, but he's really good. And again, all these pieces, it's coming together, right? So how did the 2017 season go for the Baltimore Ravens that year? As you can see, the Baltimore Ravens, they improved by 1 game, 9-7. They just missed the playoffs. You remember that historic touchdown, I think about Tyler Boyd versus the Bengals, which they lost that game, letting the Buffalo Bills into the playoffs. And then their defense had a little bit
regress, but you know they show signs of improvement at the same time. 12th best in total yards and passing yards, top 10. Passing touchdowns, top 5 at 5. Interceptions, best in the league again. Sacks, improved. And touchdowns improved. So they went from the bottom of the 9, bottom of 10 in passing touchdowns to number 5 in sacks. Really bad. Number 7 now. And we're going to talk about why, but the rushing yards, number 18, middle of the pack. Rushing touchdowns, number 7, top 10. Points given up, number 6 in the league. Really, really good. C.J. Mosley, he went crazy. 132 total tackles, 11 tackles for loss. Terrell Suggs, T. Sizzle, a Pro Bowler, 11 sacks. Eric Weddle had 6 interceptions. Brandon Carr, that signing went under the radar, 4 interceptions. And Matthew Judon, he's emerging, 17 tackles for loss. He blew up that year. 2017 and 2018, like again, the Ravens, they're developing these dudes and they're just blowing up. He's a 4th round, 5th round pick, and he just blew up all of a sudden. 17 tackles for loss. There are 4 games that I want to go over that really show how dominant this defense was. The first game versus the Cincinnati Bengals, they won 20-0, a shutout. They forced 4 interceptions. C.J. Mosley, Jimmy Smith, Ladarius Webb, and Brandon Carr, they all had 1. They forced a fumble. Andy Dalton, they had 5 sacks. Sizzle had 2 of them joints. Tony Jefferson, he had 1. Michael Pierce had 1, and Zadarius Smith had 1, allowing only 221 yards. The next game was versus the Cleveland Browns. Again, forced 4 more interceptions. One of them was by the rookie Tyus Bowser, Ladarius Webb, Eric Weddle, and Brandon Carr. Brandon Carr and Eric Weddle, they're showing off their value. They're players that are like throwaway players, and they come to the Ravens, and they're showing out. Come on now. 1 fumble, Deshaun Kaiser, he fumbled the ball. 3 sacks, Tyus Bowser, Patrick Osweiler, and T. Sizzle all had sacks. And we got to talk about Patrick Osweiler in a little bit. But in these next 2 games, it was the Packers and Browns. As you can see, another shutout versus the Green Bay Packers. 3 interceptions. Eric Weddle had 1. This is Marlon Humphrey's first career interception, the rookie, and then Jimmy Smith had 1. It was Brett Hundley at quarterback again. I think A-Rod, he broke his leg or tore his ACL or something like that, so he didn't play for like half the season. He missed majority of the games, but still, they still dominated with 6 sacks. Judon, right, he's emerging. Will Henry and T. Sizzle all had 2. Them boys showed out, man. And then week 15 versus the Cleveland Browns, they won 27-10. Right, 2 interceptions. Again, Brandon Carr and Eric Weddle. They're showing their value. And they had 2 fumbles. Deshaun Kaiser and Duke Johnson both had fumbles. And then 2 sacks, Judon and Zadarius Smith. And then only 266 yards given up. This defense really bought out. All 4 of those games, they had more. They forced more than 3 turnovers. I think at least 4 turnovers in all 4 of these games. This defense really showed out. And we got to talk about the 2017 offseason, right? Because they're only going to get better, right? But before that, we got to talk about these 2 players. The emergence of Matthew Judon and Patrick Osweiler. Again, Matthew Judon, he had 61 total tackles, 17 tackles for loss. That was in the top 10 that year, and he had 8 sacks. Again, he's a 4th round, 5th round pick. I think a 5th round pick. So dude is not supposed to be playing like this early on in his career, right? He's a valuable key piece. They have Zadarius Smith, Terrell Suggs, Matthew Judon within himself, and a couple other guys in that rotation. And the fact that he's standing out as a 5th round pick, that's insane to me, man. And then you got the emergence of Patrick Osweiler again. You got C.J. Mosley racking up 100 tackles a game. Patrick Osweiler, he was actually on the practice squad, and he got signed to the team, obviously. 90 total tackles this year. 1 forced fumble and 4 tackles for loss. Bro was balling out, right? And again, the Baltimore Ravens are developing these dudes, and again, they're only going to get better, right? And in the 2018 offseason, they actually fired their defensive coordinator at the time and upgraded their linebacker coach, Don Martindale, to their defensive coordinator. So who exactly is Don Martindale? Don Martindale, he is a great coach. He's one of the more underrated coaches. I'm not going to sit here and give you like a big bio about him or anything like that. But Don Martindale, he has played a big role in this Ravens like defensive dominance rebuild, or I guess you can say whatever. He, prior to him being a head coach or being a defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens, he was a linebackers coach for the Raiders, the Ravens, and then the Broncos. He with the Raiders, they were like, this is when the Raiders was like really bad, so he really didn't have a whole lot of really good linebackers. They had Kirk Morrison and some other guy, but they weren't really all that good. With the Denver Broncos in the 1 year, he did coach Elvis Dummerville, I think he said his name, which he becomes a Raven later, but he actually coached him. He became an All-Pro and a Pro Bowler. Prior to him being an All-Pro and Pro Bowler, he didn't win anything. It was like 2 years, and then he came like his third year. When it comes to defensive coaches, I think they play a big part in developing players and things like that, because they're specifically working with the actual group and not with the whole defensive unit or offensive unit. So I think he has a big part. He's coached 3 Pro Bowlers and 1 All-Pro. The All-Pro is Elvis, and then Sizzle and CJ Mosley. Now I guess you can say Terrell Suggs doesn't really count, but CJ Mosley, he counts, because he was there 2 years before CJ Mosley, and then when he got CJ Mosley, he molded him into what he has become. And then when he left Don Martindale and the Ravens, I mean, CJ Mosley hasn't really, been relevant, but that's Don Martindale. So that's Don Martindale. And in the 2018 offseason, the Baltimore Ravens, they didn't make really any big signings, no trades, nothing like that. And again, they upgraded Don Martindale to defensive coordinator. Now, in the 2018 draft, we know when they drafted Lamar Jackson, X, Y, and Z, cool, right? But they drafted really 2 other projects. Again, the Ravens and this theme of drafting in the mid rounds and developing these guys, and they become really good for them. They drafted Anthony Everett and Kenny Young in the 4th round, and Kenny Young actually becomes a big piece in the 2019 season, which we're going to talk about, obviously. But the Baltimore Ravens, again, they're on the come up. This defense is staying dominant. They're holding their bar to the end, but can the defense can the offense hold their side, which is pretty irrelevant for this video. But how did the Ravens do in the 2018 season? The Baltimore Ravens, they did really, really well in defense, man. The defense bought out that year. They went 10-6. They made the playoffs, which is really great. They had 3 Pro Bowlers again: CJ Mosley, Eric Weddle, and Brendan Williams, man. Total yards, best in the league. Passing defense, 4th best in yards. 3rd, they had a tie in touchdowns. It was 3rd place tie, I guess you could say. Interceptions for us, they didn't do that good. They couldn't turn the ball over that well, but 7th best. That's cool. That's good. Sacks were 6th best, so they're sort of falling back into that, bend don't break. We got to create pressure. We got to force turnovers, but rushing yards, everything was top 5. Yards, touchdowns, and just those 2. But points per game were 2nd best. CJ Mosley, he's balling out again, and Marlon Humphrey, he's developing. He's getting more reps at that 1 spot, the 2 spot. When you watch that 2018 season, Marlon Humphrey, he actually got more reps as the season went on and on and on. So what happened in 2019 offseason? So heading into the 2019 offseason, the Baltimore Ravens had a lot of moves to make, a lot of decisions to make, and one of the first things that they made was letting go of Eric Weddle, CJ Mosley, and Zadarius Smith, man. So although Zadarius Smith didn't have a big impact on the defense throughout the years, he made an immediate impact with the Green Bay Packers, which you're going to see this theme now with these, as we conclude to the video. Many players that have left, they have actually become like really good, pieces on other teams, and the Ravens were just hiding their potential. But they actually terminated Eric Weddle's contract, and they let CJ Mosley walk. If you remember, CJ Mosley wanted a big contract, but the Ravens wanted him to be on the franchise tag, and he said no. And bro, skedaddled on out of there. But the acquirement that they got was Earl Thomas, Marcus Peters in a midseason trade, Pernell McPhee, which he was a Raven before, and Josh Bain to replace CJ Mosley. Now, the biggest piece out of all these acquirements was Earl Thomas. Now, sadly, I have to go over this who Earl Thomas is, because a lot of you young kids don't know who Earl Thomas is. You guys met him off that Derrick Henry vicious stiff arm. But don't know who Earl Thomas is, man. Earl Thomas, he's one of the greatest free safeties of all time. Coming out of Texas University, he was one of the key pieces, if not the key piece, of that early 2010s Legion of Boom with the Seattle Seahawks, man. As you can see from his accolade, with the Seahawks, he won. Well, not one. Yeah, he won one Super Bowl. He was named 3-time first team All Pro, 2-time second team All Pro, 6-time Pro Bowler, and the 2010s All Decade team. The reason why I put the Seahawks on the All Decade team because that's really what it was really going off of. He didn't really make a big impact with the Ravens, but this signing, it was really big for the Ravens because now they have a better safety, way better. And I'm not gonna say way better, but he's a better safety than Eric Weddle. I think he's a little bit younger, if I'm not mistaken, a little bit younger. But either way, this is a better signing, a better player. I think a better fit for the Ravens was Earl Thomas. Earl Thomas, a lot of people say, he's a cover 3 guy, sits in the middle, which is all those true, but he can also play in the box. In his early years, he was all over the ball, in the box, in the slot, up and down, all around the field, man. So how did the 2019 Ravens do that year? But before we get there, man, in the middle of the season, the Baltimore Ravens made a big move. They traded for former Kansas City Chief and the current, at the time, Los Angeles Ram, Marcus Peters, man. They snagged him up. If you don't remember, man, that big trading day when Jalen Ramsey, he demanded a trade from the Jaguars to the Rams or wherever. Marcus Peters got traded to the Baltimore Ravens that same day before Jalen Ramsey. I think before or right after Jalen Ramsey got traded to the Rams. It was for Kenny Young in a 5th round pick. Here are the trade details right here. I'm not going to talk about Jalen Ramsey, obviously. Just talking about Marcus Peters now. They added another demon to the secondary. Now you have Marcus Peters. You have Marlon Humphrey, Earl Thomas. That's a really good secondary. So how did they do? The Ravens went 14-2. They made the playoffs. They had 4 Pro Bowlers, man. Matthew Judon, his first one. Marlon Humphrey, his first one. Marcus Peters, he's made multiple ones. And then Earl Thomas, this is his first time as a Raven, man, making that Pro Bowl, man. The Ravens defense really did show up and show out, man. They had the 4th best total yard defense. Passing yards was 6th best. Passing touchdowns was 2nd best. Marcus Peters had a lot to do with that. Interceptions forced was 7th. Not that bad. And they got Marcus Peters because they couldn't turn the ball over at the time. And then the sacks wasn't the best. 8th worst. Come on, you gotta do better. But the rushing was all top 5, man. And as you can see, man, Chuck Clark, again, a 4th round pick, 73 total tackles. Patrick Ossenwald, 64, 63 tackles, whatever, man. Matthew Judon, 14 tackles for loss, man. This defense is balling out, man. But although they had a top 5 rushing defense, man, and the divisional round versus the Tennessee Titans, man, Derrick Henry and the Tennessee Titans come to Baltimore and they literally dominate. They killed Baltimore, man. They won 28-12, man. Derrick Henry, that was the birth of Derrick Henry. Like, we knew Derrick Henry was good, but bro showed pure dominance that postseason, and really versus the Ravens that very, their second game. The Titans, they showed like no mercy. They literally ran the ball down their throats. Pause, as you can see, man. Derrick Henry, 30 carries, 195. He had a passing touchdown. Like, he was such a threat that they literally threw the ball at the goal line. He was that big of a threat. He had that nasty, he had that iconic stiff arm on Earl Thomas, which honestly changed Earl Thomas. That was a career-altering stiff arm. I'm just playing. But heading into the 2020 offseason, man, a lot of drama, a lot of things are happening with the Ravens, man. Obviously, we got the worldwide pandemic happening, so. What moves are the Ravens going to do to, make the defense better? Let's see what they do. But with all that being said, man, we're going to, wrap up this video. This is part 1. Part 2 is going to be the downfall of the 2021, the 2020 season, and heading to the 2022 season, my expectations for the Baltimore Ravens. The second part may drop mid-season or early season, not mid-season, early season, man. But I can't wait to drop that video, man. If you liked the video, man, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe, bruh. And we are out, man. Peace.